Rain pelted against the window of David's corner office as he stared at the pregnancy ultrasound photo on his desk. Twin heartbeats. The image that should have filled him with joy instead sent waves of panic through his body. At 32, he was on the verge of either making his tech company soar or watching it crash and burn. The expansion to Silicon Valley couldn't wait, not even for the birth of his children. His wife Mi's radiant face flashed in his mind. Just yesterday, she had been arranging tiny onesies in the nursery, her 7-month pregnant belly brushing against the dresser as she hummed a lullaby. "They'll be here before we know it," she had said, her eyes sparkling with joy. "I can't wait to see you hold them." But all David could think about was the mounting pressure. The investors were breathing down his neck, demanding results. The company's future hung by a thread, and the Asian market was slipping through his fingers. He'd spent 5 years building this company from nothing, surviving on instant noodles and coffee, working from a tiny apartment until his dreams finally started taking shape. The decision had been forming in his mind for weeks, like a dark cloud growing larger and darker until it blocked out everything else. He wasn't ready for this. The responsibility of 2 tiny lives, the sleepless nights, the constant demands of fatherhood. What kind of father could he be if he couldn't even secure their future? His hands trembled as he pulled out a sheet of paper. The words came slowly at first, then in a rush. "My dearest May, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. The company needs me in California immediately, and I can't divide myself between our family and what needs to be done. You deserve someone who can be there fully, not half a husband and half a father. I've left divorce papers with my lawyer. The house is yours, and I'll make sure you're taken care of financially. I'm sorry. I know these words aren't enough, but they're all I have to offer right now. David." He placed the letter in an envelope, his wedding ring clinking against the desk as he set it beside the note. The sound echoed in his ears like a final bell tolling. That evening, he watched Mai sleeping peacefully on the couch, one hand resting protectively over her belly. He wanted to memorize every detail. The way her long black hair fell across her face, the gentle rise and fall of her chest, the small smile playing on her lips even in sleep. The twins moved beneath her hand, as if waving goodbye to a father they would never know. The taxi was waiting outside. David's footsteps were heavy as he walked down the path, each step taking him further from the life he could have had. His suitcase felt like it was filled with stones instead of clothes and documents. The driver asked if he was okay. He must have seen something in David's face, but David just nodded, his throat too tight to speak. As the taxi pulled away, he didn't look back at the warmly lit house where he'd spent the happiest years of his life. He told himself this was for the best. They would be better off without a man who chose ambition over love, success over family. The city lights blurred through his tears as he headed toward the airport, toward his future, leaving behind the greatest treasure he would ever have. Little did he know that this decision would haunt him every single day for the next 5 years, that success would taste like ashes in his mouth, and that every child's laugh would remind him of the twins he left behind. The road ahead was paved with gold, but his heart remained in that house, with the family he abandoned on a rainy night when fear proved stronger than love. Thunder rolled overhead as his plane took off, carrying him towards Silicon Valley and away from everything that truly mattered. In his pocket, his phone buzzed one last time with Mi's daily message. The babies were very active today. They must know their daddy's coming home soon. He turned off the phone, closed his eyes, and tried to convince himself that time would heal all wounds, both his and theirs. 5 years passed like a blur of endless meetings, international flights, and late-night strategy sessions. David had transformed his struggling startup into Tech Future, a company valued at billions. His office now occupied the top floor of a gleaming skyscraper in San Francisco, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the bay. Yet he spent most of his time staring at his computer screen, trying to fill the emptiness with more work. "Mr. Chen, your 9 a.m. is here," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. David straightened his designer tie, a far cry from the cheap polyester ones he used to wear. Success had given him everything money could buy: tailored suits, luxury cars, a penthouse apartment. But it couldn't buy peace of mind. The morning news played silently on his wall-mounted screen. Tech Future CEO David Chen named among top 40 under 40. His mother had called earlier, proud of his latest achievement, but her voice held a note of sadness. She never mentioned May or the twins, honoring his request, but he knew she kept in touch with them. Sometimes he wanted to ask about them, but the words always stuck in his throat. During board meetings, he was known for his laser focus and sharp decision-making. The man with the golden touch, they called him in the business magazines. If only they could see him at 3 a.m., sitting in his empty penthouse, scrolling through old photos on his phone. He'd kept just one. A blurry ultrasound image showing 2 tiny heartbeats. Your schedule today includes the product launch meeting at 10, lunch with investors at noon, and the quarterly review at 2, his assistant reminded him. David nodded, already reaching for his 3rd coffee of the morning. Sleep had become a luxury he rarely enjoyed, his dreams too often filled with what-ifs and might-have-beens. The product launch was a massive success. Tech Future's new AI-powered educational platform would revolutionize online learning. As David demonstrated the software, he caught sight of 2 small children in the audience, probably belonging to one of the investors. The little boy was showing his sister how to use a tablet, their dark heads bent together in concentration. His heart clenched. His twins would be that age now. Later that evening, as celebrations erupted around him, David stood alone by the window of the company's event space. Champagne flowed freely, and everyone wanted to shake his hand, pat his back, be in the presence of success. A young programmer approached him, cradling a newborn. "Sir, would you mind holding her for a photo? My wife's a huge fan of your work." The baby was tiny, with that fresh, new life smell. David's hands trembled as he held her, smiling stiffly for the camera. She grabbed his finger with surprising strength, and for a moment he couldn't breathe. Back in his office, he did something he hadn't done in years. He searched for May online. Her profile photo showed her smiling at the camera, looking even more beautiful than he remembered. Her status listed her as a children's book illustrator now. He quickly closed the tab before he could look for photos of the twins. That night, driving home in his Tesla, he passed a neighborhood park. Families were out enjoying the warm evening, parents pushing swings, catching little ones at the bottom of slides. He pulled over, killing the engine. A father was teaching his twins to ride bikes, one hand steadying each child as they wobbled forward. The man's laughter carried across the park, mixed with the children's excited squeals. David's vision blurred. His empire of technology and innovation suddenly felt meaningless compared to those simple moments of joy. He traded the chance to teach his own children to ride bikes for the ability to buy a fleet of luxury cars. He'd missed their first words, first steps, first everything. The cleaning crew found him still in his office the next morning, surrounded by financial reports and market projections. "Are you okay, Mr. Chen?" the elderly janitor asked, concerned. David managed a weak smile, but the truth was far from okay. He had everything he'd ever dreamed of professionally, but his personal life was as empty as his penthouse. His assistant buzzed in with the day's schedule, but David barely heard her. He was staring at the family photo on his competitor's desk from yesterday's meeting, 3 kids climbing all over their dad, everyone laughing. The man had built a successful company while being present for his family. It was possible. He had chosen Rome. As dawn broke over the bay, David made his first personal promise in 5 years. Success meant nothing without someone to share it with. He had to know if it was too late to make things right. The weight of his choices pressed down on him like a physical thing, but for the first time in years, he felt something else too. Hope. The sun rose higher, painting the sky in shades of possibility. On his desk, next to the latest sales reports and merger proposals, lay a small note he'd written to himself. "Some things can't be fixed with money or success. But maybe, just maybe, they can be fixed with love and time." The Boston Children's Hospital Charity Gala wasn't the kind of event David usually attended. But his PR team had insisted it would be good press for Tech Future's new educational software division. He adjusted his body, feeling out of place despite his perfectly tailored tuxedo. The grand ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the jewelry of Boston's elite, but his mind was elsewhere. This was his first time back in Boston since that rainy night 5 years ago. A waiter offered him champagne, which he declined. He needed a clear head tonight. Somewhere in this city, his children were probably getting ready for bed. Did they have a bedtime story routine? Did they sleep with night lights? These questions haunted him daily now, growing stronger since his moment of clarity in the park last week. David. A familiar voice froze him mid-step. He turned slowly, his heart pounding. There stood Jun, May's younger sister, looking elegant in a deep blue gown. She was a pediatric surgeon now, he remembered. Of course she'd be at a children's hospital event. Her eyes held none of the anger he'd expected. Instead, they showed something more complex, like pity mixed with hope. Jun, I. The words died in his throat. What could he possibly say to the aunt of the children he'd abandoned? She reached into her clutch and pulled out her phone. I think you should see this, she said quietly, scrolling through her photos. They had their 5th birthday last month. The world stopped spinning. There on the screen were 2 children blowing out candles on a cake shaped like a rocket ship. The boy had David's eyes and determined chin, while the girl was a perfect mini version of May, down to the way she scrunched her nose when smiling. They were wearing matching space-themed party hats. Their names are Daniel and Grace, Jun said softly, watching his face. Daniel loves building things. He can spend hours with his Legos. Grace already reads at a 2nd grade level. She wants to write stories like her mom. David's legs felt weak. He gripped the nearby pillar for support, his eyes never leaving the phone as Jun swiped through more photos. The twins at the zoo feeding giraffes. Grace showing off a drawing she'd made. Daniel proudly holding up a science fair certificate. How are they? How's May? His voice cracked on her name. Jun's expression softened. She's strong. She's published 3 children's books now, illustrations and all. The twins think their daddy is away on a very long business trip, working hard to make the world better with his computers. The weight of this revelation nearly brought David to his knees. She didn't tell them I abandoned them. No, Jun shook her head. She says every child deserves to believe they're loved. She keeps your old photos, tells them stories about you. She wanted them to have the option of loving their father, even if you never came back. Tears blurred David's vision. All these years, he'd imagined Mai painting him as the villain he'd been. Instead, she'd protected his image, given their children the gift of hope. He didn't deserve such kindness. Jun touched his arm gently. Would you like to see more photos? I have videos too. Daniel's kindergarten graduation was last month. He asked if his dad would come home for 1st grade. They found a quiet corner away from the party's buzz. For the next hour, Jun shared glimpses of the life he'd missed. Grace singing in the school talent show. Daniel learning to ride a bike with training wheels. Both of them playing in autumn leaves, building snowmen, hunting Easter eggs. They're happy kids, David, but they ask about you, especially now that they're in school and see other dads at pickup time. Jun paused, choosing her words carefully. I'm not saying you deserve a second chance, but those children, they deserve to know their father if he's ready to be one. David wiped his eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. I've made so many mistakes. June, how do I even begin to make this right? Start with honesty, she replied, standing up. Write to Mai. Tell her everything you've just told me. She might not answer. She might not want to hear it. But it's a start. She pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. This is her work email. The rest is up to you. As Jun walked away, David stared at the card in his trembling hands. On his phone screen, he pulled up the photo of the twins at their birthday party. They were laughing, cake frosting on their cheeks, eyes bright with joy, his son and daughter. Not just blurry ultrasound images anymore, but real children with personalities, dreams, and questions about their absent father. The gala continued around him, but David remained in that quiet corner, memorizing every detail of his children's faces. Tomorrow, he would start the hardest business negotiation of his life, not for money or power, but for the chance to be part of a family he'd thrown away. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in 5 years, he felt truly awake. After the gala, David couldn't sleep. He sat in his hotel room, scrolling through the photos Jun had sent to his phone. Each swipe revealed another moment he'd missed. The twins' first steps, first words, first day of preschool. His finger lingered on a video of Grace reading a bedtime story to her stuffed animals, her small voice clear and confident. This is how Mommy reads it, she said, holding the book like a teacher. The next morning, instead of flying back to San Francisco, David found himself driving through his old neighborhood. The streets hadn't changed much, but the small houses seemed different now, each one potentially holding stories like his own. He parked across from their old house, now painted a soft yellow instead of blue. The cherry tree he planted with Mai still stood in the front yard, bigger now, its branches heavy with spring blossoms. A young boy zoomed past on a scooter, and for a moment, David's heart stopped. But it wasn't Daniel. Jun had mentioned they'd moved to a cozier house closer to the elementary school. Still, memories flooded back. Helping May plant tulip bulbs in that garden, discussing baby names on the porch swing, planning their future in the kitchen with takeout containers spread across the counter. His phone buzzed. Jun had sent more photos. This time, they showed the twins' bedroom in their new home. The walls were covered with Grace's drawings and Daniel's science projects. A framed photo caught his eye. A much younger version of himself at a company pitch competition, smiling confidently at the camera. Below it, a child's handwriting read, "My dad is a computer genius." Hands shaking, David called his therapist, Dr. Wom, who'd been helping him work through his choices since that day in the park. "I saw them," he said, his voice rough. "Through photos, Jun showed me everything." "How are you processing this?" Dr. Wom asked gently. "Me told them I'm away on business," David's voice cracked. "She kept my photos, told them stories about me. How could she do that after what I did to her?" "Sometimes, love for our children helps us rise above our own pain," Dr. Wong replied. "What are you feeling right now?" "Shame. Gratitude. This ache I can't describe." David watched a family walk past his car, a father swinging his little girl's hand. "I thought I was protecting them by leaving, giving them a chance at a better life without a failing husband and father. But I was just protecting myself from the possibility of failure." Through Jun, David learned more about the life he'd left behind. How May had thrown herself into her art after he left, turning her sketches into a successful career illustrating children's books. How she'd created bedtime stories about a traveling father who sent his love through shooting stars. How she'd saved every news article about David's success, keeping them in a folder for the twins to read someday. On their first birthday, she'd made 2 small cakes, one shaped like a computer for Daniel, one like a paintbrush for Grace. She'd shown them pictures of David and said, "Your daddy would be so proud of you both." When Daniel struggled with math in kindergarten, she told him, "You got your daddy's brain for numbers. Keep trying. He never gives up, and neither should you." The daycare teachers had worried about the twins not having a father present, but May had handled it gracefully. "Their father is working hard to make the world better with technology," she'd explain. "Sometimes the most important jobs take us far away from the people we love." She'd created a ritual where they'd wave to the evening star, sending messages to their dad. David spent hours in his hotel room, watching videos Jun had secretly recorded over the years. Grace's dance recitals, Daniel's T-ball games. Their voices, their laughs, their tears, all the moments he should have witnessed firsthand. In one video, Daniel proudly showed off a robot he built from a kit. "Look what I made. Dad will love this when he comes home, right, Mom?" The camera caught Mi's face in that moment, a flash of pain quickly masked by a smile. "Of course he will, sweetheart. He'd be amazed by how smart you are." That evening, David walked through a local toy store, looking at all the things his children loved. Grace's favorite color was purple. She collected stuffed owls. Daniel was obsessed with space and building things. They both loved reading, swimming, and pizza with extra cheese. These small details, so ordinary yet so precious, painted a picture of the children he needed to know. Back in his hotel room, David opened his laptop. The cursor blinked on a blank email addressed to Mi's work account. How do you begin to apologize for 5 years of absence? How do you thank someone for protecting your image when you deserve their hatred? He typed and deleted dozens of openings before settling on the truth. "Dear May, I saw our children's photos today. Grace has your smile. Daniel has my mother's eyes. They are more beautiful and perfect than I could have imagined, and it's because of you. You gave them love enough for 2 parents. You gave them hope instead of hatred. You gave them a father they could be proud of, even though I gave you every reason to do the opposite." Outside his window, the evening star appeared, the same one his children wished on every night. For the first time in 5 years, David made a wish to not for success or money, but for a chance to earn back what he'd thrown away. David stared at his laptop screen, reading his email to May for the 100th time. 2 weeks of therapy sessions and countless drafts had led to this moment. Dr. Wong had helped him understand that true healing required complete honesty, no excuses, no justifications. Dear May, I saw our children through Jun's photos. The truth is, I've spent the last hour trying to find the right words to start this letter, but there aren't any. How do you apologize for 5 years of absence? How do you explain choosing fear over family? I won't insult you by saying I did it for you and the twins. That's what I told myself at the time, but it was a lie. I left because I was terrified of failing as a father, of disappointing you, of not being enough. Success became my shield against facing these fears. But now I understand that my biggest failure wasn't in business. It was in walking away from the 3 most precious people in my life. Jun showed me how you've raised our children. Every story you've told them about their father, every photo you've kept, every kind word you've spoken, I don't deserve any of it. You had every right to tell them the truth about my abandonment. Instead, you gave them hope. You protected them from the pain I caused, and I can never thank you enough for that. I'm in therapy now, not because I expect it to fix everything, but because I need to understand why I hurt the people I loved most. I've learned that success means nothing without family to share it with. The twins' birthday video showed me more joy in 5 minutes than I felt in 5 years of achieving everything I thought I wanted. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. What I did is unforgivable. I'm writing because our children deserve to know their father, not the fictional hero you've created for them, but the flawed man who wants to earn a place in their lives. If you're willing, I'd like to meet with you first to talk about whether there's any path forward. I've stepped back from day-to-day operations at Tech Future. The company can run without me, but those precious moments with Daniel and Grace, their firsts, their victories, their everyday joys, I can't get those back. All I can do is try to be present for the moments yet to come, if you'll allow it. Take all the time you need to consider this. I'll respect whatever decision you make. You can reach me anytime at this email or my personal number below. With deep regret and hope, David. He clicked send before he could second-guess himself again. The weight of 5 years of unspoken words hung in the air of his hotel room. On his bedside table, a framed photo of the twins at their birthday party reminded him of what he was fighting for. Days passed. David threw himself into therapy, working through the layers of fear and inadequacy that had driven him away from his family. He started journaling, writing letters to the twins that he might never send. Each entry was a small step toward understanding his choices and their consequences. 1 week turned into 2. David extended his hotel stay in Boston, unable to return to his empty San Francisco penthouse. He visited places that held memories: the cafe where he first met May, the park where they'd gotten engaged, the hospital where the twins were supposed to be born. Each spot felt like a piece of a life he'd carelessly discarded. John kept him updated with small details about the twins. Daniel had won first place in his science fair with a project about renewable energy. Grace had written her first story, complete with her own illustrations. Each achievement was a bittersweet reminder of all he'd missed. Then, on a rainy Tuesday morning, so similar to the night he'd left, an email notification lit up his phone. His hands trembled as he opened it. David, your email has left me with complicated feelings. For 5 years, I've tried to give our children the gift of a father they could be proud of, even if he was only a story. It wasn't easy. There were nights I wanted to tear down your photos, days when their questions about you felt like reopening a wound. But every time I looked at Daniel's determined expression when he's solving a puzzle, so much like yours, or heard Grace laugh in that way that echoes your mother's joy, I knew I couldn't take their father away from them, even if you had taken yourself away. The twins have parent-teacher conferences next month. Before we discuss any meetings, I need to know this isn't another moment of panic that will end with you disappearing again. They're old enough now to understand abandonment. I won't risk them experiencing that pain. If you're serious about being in their lives, we need to do this carefully, thoughtfully. I'm willing to meet with you first, to talk about boundaries and expectations. Jun speaks highly of your therapist. Perhaps we could arrange a session together with Dr. Wong before making any decisions about the children. I'm free next Wednesday afternoon. Dr. Wong's office would be a neutral space. May. P.S. Grace asked the Evening Star to bring her daddy home last night. Maybe some wishes do find their way. David read the email through tears. It wasn't forgiveness. It was something more valuable, a chance. One small step toward redemption, toward the family he left behind on a rainy night 5 years ago. Outside his window, the sun broke through the clouds, painting the Boston skyline in shades of possibility. The morning of the reunion felt surreal. David had barely slept, his mind replaying the careful plans made over 3 therapy sessions with May and Dr. Wong. They'd agreed to meet at a small playground near the children's school, familiar territory for the twins, with enough space for everyone to feel comfortable. David arrived an hour early, his heart pounding as he sat on a bench clutching a small gift bag. Inside were 2 carefully chosen presents, a build-your-own robot kit for Daniel and a professional art set for Grace. John had helped him select them, making sure they matched the twins' current interests. The playground was peaceful at this hour. A light breeze rustled through the maple trees, carrying the sweet scent of nearby flowering bushes. David watched other parents arrive with their children, each happy interaction making his stomach tighten with nervous energy. At exactly 10 a.m., a familiar blue SUV pulled into the parking lot. David stood, then sat, then stood again, his legs shaking. Through the car window, he could see May helping 2 children out of their seats. His children. In real life, not through photos or videos. Time seemed to slow down as they walked toward him. Grace was wearing a purple dress with rainbow leggings, her long black hair in 2 neat braids. Daniel had on a space-themed t-shirt, his sneakers lighting up with each step. They held onto May's hands, looking at him with a mixture of curiosity and uncertainty. May looked exactly as he remembered, but with a quiet strength in her bearing that hadn't been there before. She'd warned him during their therapy sessions. The twins knew he was coming, but they'd been prepared gently, told that their daddy had finally finished his very long business trip. "Hello," David managed to say, his voice barely a whisper. Grace was the first to speak. "Aren't you really our daddy?" she asked, her head tilted to one side. "The one from the pictures?" David knelt down to their level, tears already forming in his eyes. "Yes, I am. I've missed you both so much." Daniel stepped forward, studying David's face intently. "Mom says you make computers that help people. I built a robot at school. Want to see pictures?" The simple acceptance in his son's voice broke something inside David. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Grace moved closer to, reaching out to touch his tie. "Purple is my favorite color," she informed him seriously. "I know," David smiled through his tears. "Your Aunt Jen told me. I brought something for both of you, if it's okay with your mom." He glanced at May, who nodded her permission. The twins' eyes lit up as they opened their gifts. Grace immediately began examining each art pencil with reverence, while Daniel started reading the robot kit's instructions. Their excitement felt like a gift David didn't deserve. "Can we show Dad the playground?" Daniel asked May. "I can go super high on the swings now." May smiled gently. "Of course. Stay where I can see you." David followed the twins, listening as they chattered about their favorite parts of the playground. Grace demonstrated her perfect pumping technique on the swings, while Daniel showed off his monkey bar skills. Their energy was infectious, their joy uncomplicated by the weight of the past. "Push me, Dad," Grace called out. The word Dad sent a shiver through him. He looked at May for permission, and at her nod, began gently pushing his daughter on the swing. Her delighted giggles mixed with Daniel's calls to watch him climb the rope ladder. As the morning went on, the initial awkwardness began to fade. They played together on the slides, built sandcastles in the sandbox, and shared the snacks May had packed. The twins told him about their school, their friends, their favorite books and games. "Mom reads us stories every night," Grace told him as they sat on a picnic blanket. "She does all the different voices. Sometimes she shows us pictures. We need to take things slowly," May explained gently. "But Dad will visit again soon." "I promise," David added, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll be here for your next visit. And the one after that. And all the ones after that if you want." As they walked back to their cars, Daniel turned and ran back to David. "I forgot to tell you something important," he said seriously. "Every night, we wave to the Evening Star and send you messages. Did you ever get them? David knelt down, pulling his son close. I got every single one, he whispered. They helped me find my way back home. Watching the blue SUV drive away, David felt both emptier and fuller than he'd ever been. The playground seemed quieter without their laughter, but his heart was loud with hope. He'd missed so much, but today was a beginning. His phone buzzed. A text from May with pictures from their morning together. In them, his children were smiling, happy, real. No longer just images on a screen or wishes sent to stars, but warm, loving, forgiving little people who had somehow found room in their hearts for him. He saved the photos, then opened his calendar to block out every possible moment he could spend with them. Business meetings could wait. Board calls could be rescheduled. He had 5 years of bedtime stories, swing pushes, and robot building sessions to make up for, and he wasn't going to waste another minute. 3 months after that first playground meeting, David sat in his new Boston apartment, surrounded by moving boxes. The wall of his home office was covered with children's artwork, Grace's drawings, and Daniel's robot designs. His previously pristine desk now held framed photos of weekend outings and precious crayon-written notes. The transition hadn't been easy. Stepping down as CEO of Tech Future had sparked countless headlines. Tech billionaire gives up empire for family. He'd kept his position on the board, but handed over daily operations to his capable deputy. Some called it career suicide. David called it survival. Dad, you're doing it wrong. Daniel's voice pulled him from his thoughts. They were attempting to build a model solar system for Daniel's science project. Grace sat nearby, carefully coloring the planets while Mai helped with the measurements. These Sunday afternoon project sessions had become their new tradition. Sometimes they worked on Grace's stories, other times on Daniel's inventions. Today, all 4 of them sat on the floor of David's living room, surrounded by styrofoam balls, paint, and wire. Neptune isn't bigger than Saturn, Daniel explained patiently, showing David the reference book. City? Ah, my mistake. Could catch, Professor, David grinned, reaching for a smaller styrofoam ball. These moments of ordinary family life felt extraordinary to him. He'd traded board meetings for parent-teacher conferences, investor calls for bedtime stories. Mai looked up from where she was helping Grace paint Jupiter's stripes. The past months had brought a careful friendship between them. Not romance, that chapter was closed, but something equally valuable, partnership in raising their children. Remember when you used to mix up the planets in science class? She asked, a small smile playing on her lips. It was happening more often now, these casual references to their shared past. Each one felt like a tiny bridge being rebuilt. Mom says you were really bad at science but really good at computers, Grace piped up, her hands covered in orange paint. Is that why you make computers instead of spaceships? David laughed, catching Mei's eye. Their children had a way of cutting straight to the truth. That's exactly right. Everyone's good at different things. Like how you're amazing at art, and Daniel's brilliant at building things. The therapy sessions continued, both individually and as a family. Dr. Wong helped them navigate the complex emotions, the questions, the moments of doubt. The twins sometimes asked hard questions about why he'd been gone so long. David answered truthfully but age-appropriately, always emphasizing that it had been his mistake, never their fault. Later that evening, after the solar system was complete and the twins had gone home with May, David opened his journal. He kept it faithfully since starting therapy, documenting this journey of redemption. Today, Daniel taught me about Neptune. Grace got paint in her hair and called it Galaxy Highlights. We laughed more than we worked on the project. These are the moments I almost lost forever. The office called about a potential new investment opportunity. 5 years ago, I would have dropped everything for that call. Today, I let it go to voicemail. The old me would see that as weakness. Now I know it's strength. May mentioned our college days today. Casual, light, but significant. The wall between us isn't gone, but there are windows now. We're learning to be friends for the sake of our children. Sometimes I catch her looking at me with Daniel and Grace, not with love like before, but with something like peace. The twins have started leaving things here. Grace's colored pencils, Daniel's spare Lego pieces. Small pieces of themselves taking root in my life. Yesterday, I found one of Grace's hair ties under the couch and nearly cried. Such a tiny thing, but it meant she feels at home here. Dr. Wong asked me today if I regret stepping down as CEO. The truth is, I don't miss it at all. The power lunches, the first-class flights, the million-dollar deals, they all feel hollow compared to helping with homework or making Saturday pancakes. I'm learning that redemption isn't a destination, but a daily choice. It's choosing to be present even when it's uncomfortable. It's accepting that I can't change the past but can shape the future. It's understanding that success isn't measured in dollars but in moments. The way Daniel's face lights up when he solves a problem. Grace's proud smile when she reads me her stories. The trust in their eyes when they reach for my hand. The gradual softening of May's guard as she sees me show up day after day. I lost 5 years chasing the wrong dreams. Now I'm awake, and every moment with my children feels like a gift I almost threw away. They're teaching me more than any business school ever did, about love, forgiveness, and what really matters in life. Tonight, before they left, Grace asked if we could still wish on the evening star even though I'm not far away anymore. What should we wish for? I asked her. She thought for a moment, then smiled. For more Sundays like today. Some wishes do come true. Not the ones for money or power, but the ones that matter, for love, for family, for the chance to make things right. David closed his journal and walked to the window. The evening star was just becoming visible in the darkening sky. Somewhere across the city, he knew the twins were getting ready for bed, maybe waving to that same star. But now their wishes weren't for a distant father to return. They were for more memories to make together. Tomorrow would bring another school drop-off, another bedtime story, another chance to be the father his children deserved. The path to redemption wasn't easy, but it was the most important journey he ever taken. His empire of technology had crumbled, but in its place, he'd built something far more precious, a real home, filled with laughter, love, and the messy, beautiful reality of family life.